opera has always transformed. It has not been the same throughout its history. And that's really a misconception, like that opera has always been this one way. There's, major changes that have happened to the art form,
And
since
infinite ways to do opera.
yes, there's an almost athletic quality to opera singing. And just as you would like be astounded by like ice skaters or gymnasts, like there is an element to opera singing that is like, it's like you're in awe that a human body can create that.
If you've watched this show for a while, you know we have on unusual guests covering unusual subjects. If you haven't heard about pop-up opera, that's what we're getting into this segment. Remind me your name's Lisl, and
I'm Lisl Wangermann.
I'm Lena Goldstein.
thanks for joining me. So you guys are opera singers.
Yes, we are.
And you realized that there was something big missing from Park City, and that was obviously opera. And so how did you guys get first interested in opera?
Sure. So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about Park City and how I got interested in, and we got interested in opera in Park City. But I had been interning with the Park City Arts Council and noticed that although there was a very vibrant arts and cultural scene, that a lot of classical music was missing, and particularly opera was completely absent from what was going on in Park City. On any given night, no matter the season, there are about 10 things to choose from to do in Park City. And we think that opera should absolutely be part of that mix.
Yeah.
Yes, and we actually met doing opera as undergraduates at Yale. We each have our own individual background coming into classical singing. I went to an arts high school thinking I would do musical theater and found opera and started to love it, and wanted to continue doing that in college. So we had been collaborating on creating opera and creating it for people who are new to opera for a while. Yeah.
I'm pretty new to opera, and I like the sound of the music, and I like the theater, but I don't get what's going on. And so how do you get into opera?
That's a really tricky question. And something that I have found with my own family attending my shows is that the more you learn about opera, the more you can take away from it. But that like first entry point, like going for the first time, can be really, really tough because there's so many things that are foreign about it. It's a much longer medium than a lot of people are interacting with nowadays. Of course, often it's in a foreign language, and sometimes it's in a space where people feel really uncomfortable and out of their element. So having people go to the opera for the first time and enjoy it and then want to come back is really tough. And that's like a challenge a lot of opera companies are facing. So as we were theorizing what would work for Park City, some of the things that we thought about were how do we reduce these barriers and make it more inviting for people who are coming for the first time? And how do we make it so that those people who came for the first time want to come again? And one of the ways that we do that is through venue choice. So going into venues in this pop-up style where people already feel really comfortable and have already seen something or done something, and they know what to expect. And so instead of having 5 things about the experience that are new to people, it's only 2 things, the music and the language, or, the style of performance and that sort of thing. We're removing so many unknowns for people. And I think that that's been really successful and very exciting.
I'm an opera singer, a classical musician, and still when I see something online that I want to check out in person, so many questions run through my head of like, who's going to be there and how long will the thing be and what do I wear when I go to the thing and will there be food and drink and can I have my phone out and can I converse with the people next to me? And so we're really creating operatic and opera experiences that answer all of those questions that potential audience members might have. And so we really believe that it starts, the second someone's hearing about the event, not even when they show up for the event, and answering those questions, showing the audience has really, really helped break down those barriers for a community in Park City that hasn't had opera.
Yeah. The thing I like about it is I've been to Europe a bunch of times. I've been to Paris. You'll just go around a street corner and there'll be like a 4-piece symphony quartet, and they'll be like symphony musicians, and they're just incredibly awesome. And that, like your idea of accessibility, all the people who can't necessarily think that they're going to enjoy going into a massive theater and going to pay for it, they're going to, if they can see it in a more accessible way, in a venue where it's like, oh, I can just chill in this bar and listen to some opera singers. I think that's a pretty cool idea.
Exactly. Like just today, I was at the Park City Library, which has hosted us many times. In fact, hosted our very first performance ever. We did opera on their patio. And I was chatting with someone who also works in the nonprofit sphere. And she was like, oh my gosh, I saw you last summer while I was walking my dog at the dog park across the street, and I heard it and I really want to come again. And so it wasn't even that she was at our event, but she was just in the vicinity, and we made it so open. And that's on purpose. And we hope that, even though you didn't actually come to that event, that hooks you enough to want to come again, to one of our shows. So
Yeah, that's great. I love street performances, and I love the idea that it's much more casual, less formal. Are you guys all dressed up in your opera garb when you're doing it? Or are you like,
It totally depends on the style of the event. I'll give you two sort of different examples. One, we've done opera in the greenhouse at the Park City Gardens a couple of
oh, it's a
times
cool
now.
place.
So it's an all glass greenhouse. We serve prosecco when you walk in. Your ticket already, has. And so, in the winter, people chose to dress for the season and for a sort of our version of an operatic New Year's Eve gala. And then in the summer, it was, a totally different vibe altogether. And then we recently, in August, did a production of The Barber of Seville, which is, one of the most timeless comedic, pieces in the operatic canon. And we did it in a speakeasy on Main Street in Park City.
Oh,
And
that's
so, you enter by going down the street, down the stairs from Main Street into this underground nightclub, essentially, that we totally turned into a theater experience with cocktails that were themed for the characters, things like that.
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so how did you get this idea? Like, I mean, how did you just come up with this?
Well, like I said, we had collaborated in the past, and then we went our separate ways doing more education in vocal performance, both of us. I was in Cleveland finishing up a master's degree. Lena was in SF doing masters, but we were at a point in our musical journeys where we felt inspired to be leaders of an organization and to really be the change that we wanted to see, like in the opera industry. There's a lot of doom and gloom in classical music generally, like there's no audiences, no one wants to see this, like, will classical music survive? It's so depressing. And I've said this many times. Lena has heard me say it many times, but I'm a young person. I love opera. I know a lot of young people who also love opera. It's not age dependent, and I felt really confident based on our experiences and our expertise and what we had done in the past that we could be good leaders. And and then knowing and loving the Park City community and knowing that I believe that there was an audience that would appreciate this. That's what ultimately inspired us to do this thing, create the opera we wanted to see in the world and create it for Park City.
It's been really thrilling from the perspective of, also wanting to support our peers, wanting to support artists who are in the first 10 or 15 years of their professional careers, both locally and bringing talent from all across the country to Park City to be in residence for the period of the production that they're starring in. And so I think it's been enriching for the audience that we've built to form relationships with the artists in that sense as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might not be able to wrap their head around why preserve classical music? Why not just go with mainstream hip hop, Beyonce, Taylor Swift? My little girl always wants to listen to Taylor Swift. It's super annoying. And so how do you get kids and young people to say, hey, I want to listen to some opera. I want to get into this. Why do we need to preserve it?
It's really beautiful. And, there's something about it, like, that really transcends time. If you've ever seen La Boheme, at the end, spoiler alert, Mimi dies and the music, you are literally just heartbroken. And I can't, it's not something I can explain with words. Like I would have to show you at the opera why that feeling and that the way of telling that story is so special and so worth continuing. And that's not to say that we have to continue it the way it has always been done. Like opera has always transformed. It has not been the same throughout its history. And that's really a misconception. Like that opera has always been this one way. There's, major changes that have happened to the art form, since
And infinite ways to do opera.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to say that like it has to continue existing the way it has been done, that is false.
Another thing is, Park City Opera has started teaching arts entrepreneurship in schools where we, go into classrooms of young students, whether they're in choir, orchestra, or band, or not in music at all. And you have to be there to see the jaws drop and the eyes widen when we open our mouths or when our artists open our mouths and sing the first note. It's the first time they're hearing this sort of music performed live. And so, part of the issue is lack of exposure for young people in our community. One that, we're really hoping to solve for by presenting concerts in such public facing, familiar, backyard type spaces. And so that's part of it. And then, something I always say when I'm around people that don't have a lot of experience with opera is, what makes opera so different than some of the other like forms of singing that you hear today. And it's that we don't use microphones. And so all of the power of the we call it the resonance, all of that is coming from developed technique and literally the resonators in the spaces in our body that allow us to project over sometimes a 40, 50, player orchestra. And so that power, what you like are feeling it in your bones as a listener, because someone is up there like, making so much sound without a microphone, without a band in the back, without any of the sort of synthetic techniques that we use in other types of popular music today is extremely powerful for people of any age to experience.
That's like really a great point. Like there's an almost athletic quality to opera singing, and just as you would like be astounded by like ice skaters or gymnasts, like there is an element to opera singing that is like, it's like you're in awe that a human body can create that. So definitely, those are just some of the many reasons.
And those are things that kids notice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So have you, I'm like my little girl in her school. She luckily still has a music program she can get involved with. Most schools are dropping their music programs for lack of funding. Do you see that as a great tragedy if kids don't get involved in musical instruments or get exposed to classical music at an early age?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to an arts high school. It was the greatest experience ever. The people that I met, the creativity that we utilized and developed every day, those are skills that can be applied to everything, to any problem you have in life, whether that's in your career or, personally or, the skills that you develop by thinking creatively are invaluable. And I think it's really a pity that people don't see that there's crossover and that it's not just, just because you learn how to sing, you're only learning how to sing. No, I have learned how to work really hard, how to be patient, how to spend time by myself, get comfortable with myself, how to talk with people and introduce myself and be good at making connections when I'm meeting someone for the first time. It's taught me a lot of bravery, getting up on stage. Like those are skills that apply to everything and that everyone can benefit from.
Yeah, I did a documentary just like 25 years ago while I was at the U. And I was examining left brain, right brain thinking, and a lot of these computer programmers that were in the high up in the computer science department, they have one of the best programs at the University of Utah. They had studied music, and they said the reason why they felt they were such great programmers was because they learned music at a young age. I had never realized that was a more analytical and creative skill that could translate into something as foreign as a computer language. But
yeah, absolutely. Like the basic structure of classical music is a language similar to, a coding language or to a foreign language that you might learn. But I like to say just, making music makes you more human, and we need more people who are
more in-person contact.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm remiss to forget collaboration is a huge skill you learn through creating music with other people. Like, it's very rare that you are only creating music by yourself, and that's a skill that we need more than ever, how to work with other people and how to really bring out the best in your teammates.
Well, it's cool you developed this into an actual nonprofit business.
Yes.
How did you have the know-how to be able to do that?
We think about it a lot like a startup. We're a very lean team. We are building very quickly. We are engaging with dozens of community organizations and presenting and non-presenting partnering organizations. We have, thousands of people now who have attended our over, I think, 45 performances in less than 2 years. So we're entering our third season now, and we're busy, which is really just a wonderful thing to be. And so I think approaching this particular nonprofit as if it were an entrepreneurial startup venture has really allowed us to alter the mindset and set robust future goals and
did
build
you said music entrepreneurship at some point. Did you learn that in school? Have you had some mentors along the way and some help from other folks?
Learn by doing, and also traditionally I have found that entrepreneurship is taught particularly as it pertains to other industries and other career paths, like, for example, healthcare entrepreneurship is, or tech entrepreneurship. But so many of the skills that you need to run a business translate across all industries. And so we've really been able to apply primarily our leadership experience to this
Probably
venture.
doesn't hurt going to Yale, right?
Well, the special thing about Yale was that at the undergraduate level, all the opera is primarily student run. And so, not only were we singing in opera productions, like typically at an undergraduate level where you're getting a music degree, singers will be cast by faculty, and faculty will produce the opera. They'll get the set together, they'll get the costumes together, they will hire a director, that person will put on the show. Okay. And so the only thing that the singer is doing is singing. But where we went to school, we had to do all the parts of the production. Okay. So I learned how to stage manage first. That was my first way I got involved with Yale with opera on campus at Yale, and directing, costume design,
lighting design.
I learned how to lighting design.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of roles you got to fill.
And producing. So, we applied for grant funding from the school, and managing venue and setting up ticket sales and all of that we had to learn. And that is really, really unique and an opportunity that I wish more young singers had, and also we got to pick the repertoire that we performed. And so that was really, really exciting because we got to pick it for the people that were excited about performing opera. So, even if someone didn't have a lot of experience, but they wanted to be a part of the show, we would pick a show where there was a role for them, there was a space for them to get involved. And that was that's really special. And that's not often the case. Like, there's really a lot of school settings that I think it's so important to be the best that you don't really have a chance to learn, and you really exclude people who are just trying it for the first time. And I feel really proud that we really try to include everyone who wants to get involved. And that's something that we've continued with Park City Opera. Any organization, any person that wants to audition, we want to hear you. We want to find a way to get you involved, behind the scenes, on stage, running front of house. And, we're getting a lot of really cool artists involved in our upcoming production of Gift of the Magi, and we're really excited about that.
The best thing about opera is that it's collaborative between so many different professionals and experts and artists. You have the orchestra, you have the rehearsal pianist, you have the person who's advancing the slides with the English translation of the opera in real time so that the audience can understand what's happening. You have the wigs and the hair and the makeup, and you have the ushers, and you have the lighting designer, and of course you have the singers who are also actors on stage. Often you have a chorus or an ensemble of singers and performers as well. And so, and the list, I mean, really truly goes on and on and on. And that is, you know, just the best part of this particular art form, is we're not isolating to any one of those elements, and we're really combining them all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you got an upcoming performance, and let's just let people know, when is that happening and where is it happening?
Absolutely. So we're doing a Christmas opera. It's a holiday opera by a composer named David Conti called The Gift of the Magi. And The Gift of the Magi is based on the traditional holiday story by O. Henry. And we're actually doing it in true Park City opera style in 2 different venues across 3 different nights, so that you can really pick and choose. And so on December 17th, we're performing at Clubhouse Salt Lake City, which is just an amazing
cool
restored historic building with a really cool stage and atmosphere altogether. And then on December 19th and December 20th, we're performing at the Park City Community Church, which is really just a hub and a gathering spot for people who live in Park City, and those who are visiting Park City for the holidays and for ski season. And so, you know, we are doing this opera, which is in English, which makes it even more approachable for first-time opera goers. But we're also going to have a hot cocoa and cookie bar. We're going to have an artisan craft market featuring ceramics and ornaments and glass and paintings by local Park City-based artists.
Cards,
Yeah, so it's going to be a whole evening, not just the show itself.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So where do people get tickets?
parkcityopera.org. So you can find it all on our website.
Okay, on the last segment now, I want to get into what your aspirations are, and I want to have on one of your singers, and we'll introduce him. So we're going to take a little time out, and we'll do that.
Great.
Awesome.
Coming up.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome back. We're talking opera with 2 opera musicians, and who started a business, basically a nonprofit, producing opera in pop-up locations. A really cool story. Thanks again for joining me, guys.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And Brian? David.
David.
Sorry.
David. Yeah.
So you're an opera singer. You came to Park City. How did you find your way here?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Salt Lake City. I was born here, but moved away when I was 6. So pursued a variety of different things. Music, of course, being one of them. And I found my way back here just kind of through family. I have some family that live out here still, of course. So found my way out here, and the music world is a small one. So I happen to know Ben, who is also part of the Park City Opera team, and saw that he was starting an opera company with 2 lovely people, and so reached out to him, and it's been I'm very, very, very glad that I did, because it's been great.
And you studied opera?
Yes, studied and study currently. I'm up at the University of Utah doing my doctorate up there in voice and vocal performance. So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, we just had my daughter in here. I took her to the movie K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh, it's a hit.
I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it's
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I don't think this sucks.
Yeah.
But so again, we asked in the first segment how opera can compete in this very pop music world, where it's interesting how we're now borrowing from South Korea their popular music, and it's just caught like wildfire. How did you get into opera?
By accident, definitely. I certainly grew up singing in some form or another, whether it's in choir or in musical theater productions, things like that. But it definitely was not something that was even on my radar growing up, really. I came back to school after some time in the military, and I was planning on going in and becoming a choir teacher and just kind of doing that because that's what I knew. And immediately they were like, "We need a tenor for this thing. Can you come fill in for this?" And I said, "Sure, that's fine. I'm not really familiar with opera. This would be my first thing ever." And it was an opera by a composer by the name of Benjamin Britten. And his music is a little bit uh, not necessarily the most approachable music for a new singer or a person that is new to opera, but somehow I just found that I just really, really loved it, and that I really had so much fun doing it. It's a really funny show, and just it was such a blast that I have not looked back since. I really just like changed my major almost immediately and was like, this is what I want to do. So it's kind of by accident, but I'm very, very happy. Yeah.
Is going into opera like the equivalent of going into oil painting? Like it's a very old tradition, or have you? I mean, obviously, you guys are working on ways to revamp it and bring it to the modern era. But
Yeah.
it traditionally, like the Santa Fe Opera House, that's the only one I know of that's really famous that's in a small town like Park City.
Yeah.
Is that what they're doing? It like really super traditional, or are there other places where they're doing modern takes on it?
That's such a good question. So I think something that's kind of spoken about in the opera sphere is how in Europe productions are generally much more risky and much more avant-garde. And in the US, of course, we have some productions that take risks and that tell stories in new ways, but there's kind of a more general preference for traditional interpretations of these classic standard pieces. And of course, there's outliers in both spheres, but it's interesting to see, and also this has a lot to do with opera history and how opera is really native to Europe. The first opera came out of Italy, and I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Like it's really a nuanced issue because
So you have both like the avant-garde camp and
and
traditional camp, and
in Europe, people go to the opera. They, you can go once a year, you'll go twice a year, but you don't. It's not as divided, the people who go to opera and the people who don't go to opera, as it is in the United States. There's a culture. Some people here, they make opera part of their cultural diet, and then other people would never touch it, and that's not really my experience in Europe. And just to go back to your question about like this old art form and back to kind of what I was saying, like this idea that it has to always be done the way it's been done, I think that really does opera a disservice in the United States. And I think that, of course, there's things about the way it's done in Europe that, are not to my personal taste, but there's also things that I really admire about that. And you can go to any city in Europe and you can see the opera pretty much. You really,
Yes.
like, it's really very easy to access. And in the United States, that's not the case. And it's because that's partially because no one's done a lot of work developing the audience for it, and people don't really create or listen to the audience that they do have and what they want. So
so if I hear you correctly, that in Europe they're more willing to take risks. They're more willing to push the medium forward. Here we're kind of a little bit stuck in the more traditional.
yes, and let me just say again, this is like really a generalization. There's of course people working in the United States that are pushing the boundaries and I think are being really successful. But I think that that's an area where in the United States we have room to grow.
And that's where obviously you guys have found your niche.
Right.
But it just, oil painting, I don't think that that's really quite the right comparison to
I
opera.
wanted to be an oil
Yeah.
painter for a while. And then I realized, dang it, there's not really a big market for oil painters unless you're super talented.
I think it's also fair to say that part of that goes back to just the I guess the education of it, or just the exposure to opera. I think there's a misconception that all opera is old. All opera comes from the 19th, 18th, 17th centuries, and that's just not the case. I mean, we're performing a piece that was written right before the turn of the 21st century.
1997.
1997. So it's and there are operas being written today. Some operas, obviously in the works right now that will be being premiered this year, next year, and so on. So it's definitely an art form that is continuing to be produced even today, and I think people just don't tend to know that.
This is a dumb question, but
Oh,
I
okay,
have
dumb
to
question.
ask
Yeah,
it.
no dumb questions.
Why be an opera when you can be a musical and get more people knowing what is going on? I mean,
It's a good question. It's not a dumb question. I think, I went to my arts high school thinking I would do musical theater. And I still love musical theater. I still appreciate musical theater. I found for my voice, for who I am, opera spoke to me differently. And I felt that I, as a performer, could bring something new and special to the opera stage, where I didn't really feel that way with musical theater. Now, that could change. I'm always changing as an artist myself. But to me, classical music, this art form, it spoke to me. And that is really because I had the opportunity to get exposed to it. My first production, I was just a supernumerary, where you just get to be on stage and you act, but you get to really hear other people do it and get to hear the orchestra and see how the conductor communicates with both groups, people on stage and people in the pit. And, you know, being a part of that without the pressure of singing was a really great way to fall in love with creating this art form. But I think it's scary as an artist to think that you are pursuing something and passionate about something that no one cares about. And it's a really defeatist way of looking at it. And with Park City Opera, I feel really proud that, we went into it. There was no opera in Park City. And you can say, before we started it, you could say that that was because no one would want to go see an opera in Park City. There's no opera there because no one wants it there. We have a different view of it, which is there's no opera there because no one has created opera for that community. And when we do that, people will want to come, and people will start to enjoy it and make it a part of their routine and a part of their life. And maybe they'll go on and support other opera. So I just think it's all about the way you look at it. And I look at it as, it's a world of opportunity.
well, I think it's very both important and cool that you are young people and you're driving it rather than taking advice from old people who tell you how it should be done. Because if it was the latter, I think you would be stuck, being able to be young people and you guys are the drivers. I think that's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
again, let's tell people how they get involved in your performance and how what you're going to be doing.
Yes, so we're producing The Gift of the Magi this December 17th, 19th, and 20th. And I just want to say this is a great opera for people who have never gone to see an opera for the first, or ever. It's a great opera if you're a first-time opera goer because it is in English, so there's no language barrier. It is 70 minutes long, so you're not there all evening long. People think opera is long, boring. No.
No 4-hour operas
Yeah.
for the no.
That's not the case. It's 70 minutes and it's a great story, a great Christmas story about what's really most important at the holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a new work. So it's kind of more accessible for people who are listening to it with modern ears. So very excited about
absolutely.
that. And we're making the whole evening a really fun night with our inclusion of amazing artists and amazing food. And also there'll be a full orchestra. So if you're not a big, fan of singing, but you love instrumental music, there's something for you as well. So, and you'll get to see amazing artists like David, on stage. So there's just a lot going on and lots of things to enjoy about it.
So one component's in Salt Lake City, the other component's in Park City, as you said, and the clubhouse in Salt Lake City on North Temple, if I'm correct. Is it South Temple? Okay.
South Temple. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been there. I keep hearing about it. Like all these really cool events are going on there. So
they have a really cool model of membership and building a community around going to see and experiencing a lot of different types of art. And it's really special to be able to use that venue and to work with that organization because I think they're also looking at audience engagement in a new way, which is what we are also doing. Yeah.
Yes.
very cool. How do people buy tickets?
Online, parkcityopera.org.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you guys have anything else?
I don't know, David, do you want to say something just about what it's like working as an artist for that's really special for me
Yeah.
to be an artist running a company and working with artists that I really admire. And,
Yes, and I think I do definitely want to say that it is a very artist-friendly organization. I know they were talking a bit about how they try to really include everyone, and it's kind of a community. Like I view Park City Opera as a community, and it's one that I'm super, super happy to be a part of, and I feel very, very lucky to be a part of. They are just so welcoming and collaborative and just phenomenal. So I really, obviously I recommend coming to the show as an audience member. But if anyone is interested in kind of looking at opera from the being on stage or just being involved in a production in some capacity, that's another option as well that I can't recommend enough. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to ask you to sing some opera for us, but is that not going to happen?
Ooh, it might be tricky. You'd have to like come up with
I
a.
wish we would have warmed up.
Yes,
but
would have
yeah.
warmed up.
And again, it's
Okay.
athletic.
Or
Oh,
thought of
we-
something to sing
Yeah.
specifically. Yes.
We got to let people go to the show.
Exactly.
Yes, come to the show. Exactly. And we
Leave
do a
them-
lot of
yeah.
other concerts. There's always something going on. So check out our website. We're on Instagram, Park City Opera, also on Facebook. So a lot of ways to find out what we're doing.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, guys. I actually thought I'd have a hard time with this because I have not been to a lot of opera, but you guys are great. You're really awesome what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So if you want to learn more, again, it's parkcityopera.com.
.org.
Parkcityopera.org. Go get your tickets. I'm sure they're going to run out. So, yeah, go see The Gift of the Magi.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go, actually.
Yeah,
I think I'd
please
enjoy
do.
it.
We'd love to see you there.
And if you want to get more involved in the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the thumbs up button. Leave us comments. We love comments. Our issue of faces is almost gone. We are down to our last 2 boxes. If you want to get your hands on it, you better go out now and buy it. And you can go to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free magazine. This is our current November issue. So the turkey is kicking the Amazon box because we need to stop shopping at Amazon. And I'm talking to my wife. She shops on Amazon all the time. This is like a guide of how you can buy local. And this shows you all these amazing restaurants and local gift shops, places where you can shift your spending to local. Because as I explained in the introduction, we need to avoid the imminent corporate takeover of our communities. We can't allow Walmart, Amazon, KFC, Taco Bell, McDonald's to dominate all of our communities. We need local communities, and the only way to do that is to defend them by buying local and supporting locally owned businesses. And you need to just go pick up Utah Stories, use this as a guide to go buy your holiday shopping gifts, and try to just like shift a little bit away from Amazon, Walmart. And then we've got amazing stories about the Silver King of Park City. That's our Park City section. And then we got really fun stories about Moab's Negro Bill. It's now been renamed to Grandstaff Canyon, but how he was the first African-American settler in Moab. And it's just a phenomenal story by Blaine Ringer. I'm really super stoked he provided it. The Danites by Danny Stewart. Just a really fun issue. So subscribe to the magazine if you can afford it. If not, subscribe to our free digital newsletter. Again, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Clark's Auto is Utah's premier independent Subaru mechanic and auto shop. Check them out at clarksauto.com and on the back of Utah Stories magazine.